Hey everybody, today I want to review my Mier Lanshan 1 tent. The Lanshan 1 is a 2.2 pound trekking pole tent that you can purchase on Amazon for only $140. As you can probably tell, this isn't really an ideal pitch for this tent, but I did want to get out and give you guys a review for this thing. And as you can tell, here in Utah, there's snow everywhere, so this is about as good as it's going to get for me right now. I've seen a lot of reviews of this tent in people's backyards, but in all reality, we know in the backcountry, you're never going to get that backyard pitch on a tent. So although this isn't really a great winter tent, I do think this is kind of a good representation of what this tent's capable of and what it's not capable of. So I guess the first thing I'd like to comment on is how much of a pain this tent is to set up. This is my first trekking pole tent, so I can't really attest to other trekking pole tents, but I will say that it's really difficult to get the same pitch on this tent every single time you go out. I found myself adjusting knots pretty much everywhere on this tent. Even when I set my trekking pole to the same exact height, directly from one trip to the next or one day to the next, I always feel like I'm adjusting something. I'm sure that has a lot to do with the terrain you're in, but like I said, it can be from one day to the next in very similar terrain, and I still feel like I'm adjusting things a lot. So for me, that's a pretty big con. One of the biggest pros I have for this tent is the weight and the size it packs down to. This tent's given me a lot of room in my pack. If you've been following my channel for a while now, you know I like to keep everything pretty minimal, and this tent helps me do that really well, so I like that. Another big pro for this tent is the Rainfly. This Rainfly is made out of a 15 denier ripstop nylon that's been silicone treated and has a polyurethane coating on it as well. On my version of this tent, everything came seam taped right out of the box. It seems that there's some other versions of this tent out there that you have to seam seal yourself, but this is not one of them. Speaking of the structure of this tent, the bathtub floor that's connected to the inner mesh seems to be a high quality as well. It's constructed of a 20 denier nylon that's been silicone treated and polyurethane coated. I've had no issues with this tent taking on water, and the floor is seam taped as well. Another con on this tent for me is the stakes they ship it with. I'll do a close-up here, but you can tell they're not a very high quality stakes, so I'd recommend purchasing your own stakes if you're going to be using this tent. Another pro on this tent for me would be, I think it's pretty spacious inside. It fits my body well. I'm about 5'9" and 190 pounds or so, and I think the length and width of this tent fits me super well. I can never seem to get the inner mesh to tug out as much as it's supposed to at the guy out points, but I feel like if I could get that inner mesh tight, this tent would be a perfect size for me. Those are some of the basics. I think we'll go inside for the rest of this review.
Now that we're inside, I think I'll give you a list of pros and a list of cons, and then I'll tell you what I think about the tent overall. So as I mentioned earlier, the pros for this tent are it's lightweight, the size it packs down to, the price point, the fact that it includes a high quality, dependable Rainfly, and for someone my size, it's pretty spacious. And a couple pros I didn't mention earlier are that it can be set up to be ventilated pretty well to reduce condensation. The fact that it includes an inner mesh also helps mitigate condensation. It has a decent sized vestibule, and the Rainfly is set up in a way to where you can have the whole front of the tent open. Now some of the cons I mentioned earlier are the setup and how hard it is to get the same pitch every single time. The fact that it ships with stakes that I wouldn't trust on a backpacking trip. Although the inner mesh is great, it's really hard to get it tight and guide out properly. And then one I really didn't touch on earlier is, although it is a good size, if you're any taller than me, I wouldn't purchase this tent. So I think that's a pretty good list of pros and cons. What I want to do now is compare the packed size of this tent to a popular budget freestanding tent. Again, this is the size of the Lanshan 1 packed down. And this is the size of the Perea Outdoors Bryce one-person freestanding tent. As you can tell, the Lanshan 1 has a huge advantage when it comes to packability. So what do I think of this tent overall? I think that if you're looking to purchase a trekking pole tent for a low price, or maybe just try your first trekking pole tent at all, I don't think you're going to do much better for the price of the Lanshan 1. I would recommend this tent to anybody. However, it does have its quirks, and I would suggest to anybody that buys this tent to take it out several times and make sure that you're really familiar with it before you commit to a big backpacking trip. I don't think I would recommend this tent to anybody purchasing their first tent, but I would recommend it to somebody purchasing their first trekking pole tent, if that makes sense.
Thanks for watching the video today, guys. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.